And now, it's that time of the week once again. Welcome to the Departure Lounge podcast with your hosts, Tom Whittle and Steve Wooldridge. Your ticket to the home of aviation podcasts. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
Hello, everybody, and this is a bit different for everybody, isn't it? Welcome to episode number 27 of the Departure Lounge podcast here on the Departure Lounge YouTube channel. My name, as ever, is Tom Whittle, as you can see, we are doing things a little bit different today. Moving forward, this is how we're going to be doing it, it's going to be a lot of fun. So like I said, my name is Tom Whittle. Joining me this evening is our co-host, the wonderful Steve Woodbridge. Steve, good evening to you. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thanks. Don't worry, everybody watching. Halloween hasn't come early. This is just how I look. So I'm sorry you can have to put up with it.
Don't put yourself down like that.
That's other people's job, right?
Bit different tonight, isn't it, in terms of being able to kind of do video chat.
Yeah, no, it is far more interactive, and hopefully everyone at home will sort of enjoy the new format and what have you, and it'll be good. And the possibilities of what we can now do with this, which I'm sure you'll talk about at some point, is almost endless, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We'll get to that sort of towards the end of tonight's stream. But yes, it should be a good one. And also joining us for some aviation chit chat this evening is, of course, resident comment reader and the most northern man in the UK. It's Ian Hartley. Ian, a very good evening to you. How are you this evening?
I'm very good, Tom. Are you well, Steve, as well?
Yeah, good evening, Ian. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised actually of how it looks. Both of you look nothing like your Tinder profiles.
Yeah.
What you're doing, looking me up on there anyway, is another story.
Well, that's brilliant. Glad to be.
I appreciated your attention anyway. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah,
that's it. Yes, absolutely wonderful.
Right, so really
let's get into sort of a little bit of housekeeping before we continue with tonight's topic, which we'll get onto shortly. So if you wish to follow us on any of our social medias, links will be in the description of the show below. Like I say, it's Instagram, Discord, Twitter, Spotify, Facebook, mail pigeon, everything to get hold of us. And of course, keep up to date with everything that's happening on the show. Throughout the evening as well, we'll be putting up all the Twitter handles of social media handles of myself, Steve, and Ian as well. For those, do get your chats into the. Do get your comments into the chat, rather, I should probably say, because we will put them onto the screen as we are doing right now from Rob Brown Plane Spotting. And as we know, Ian is set off already. So he says, evening chaps, chutney anyone. Just Ian
That's
on
the
that.
problem. We can't hide it this week. If we start laughing, there's no hiding it.
To add, is there? No, definitely
not. So good evening to you, Rob Brown. Get your comments in, and we will bring them onto the chat throughout the evening. And of course, like I say, get your any sort of info you want to share with us on, of course, tonight's topic, which is, of course, the Boeing 737. Bring them in, and we'll get them read out for as the show goes on. But we are also, as like I said, on Spotify, so we can. We've got the link in the description below. So go check out not just this episode, which will go up tomorrow evening, but also other 26 episodes that we have done so far. So do check those out. And of course, if you wish to become a guest on the show itself and join the likes of us and see our wonderful faces on screen, do sort of drop us a message on social media. And we will get you on as soon as we can. We have put a poll into the comments, so you can have a vote on that. And tonight's topic is: would you like to see us stream Flight Sim 2020 on the channel? Like I said, get your votes in on that one, and we'll get the answers read out at the end. Anyway, shall we crack on with this evening's show?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a really big subject. Sort of every week when we do one of these debates, there is so much learning and reading material to get through. I dare say we'll sort of scrape the surface rather than really sort of explore every single corner. There was that much to learn today.
Absolutely, and it's there was a lot to take in when doing some research on the 737 family, right back to sort of when it all began, to sort of the future in terms of sort of the MAX aircraft. So we're going to dive into that, and then at the end of the show, we'll go through a little bit more of what the plans are for the podcast moving forward. But anyway, let's crack on. So as we know, the 737 is undoubtedly the most successful aircraft ever built. First flight being in sort of 1967, and they really haven't sort of looked back since. It's been a bit of it was a rocky start for Boeing. They didn't sell many of the aircraft to begin with. However, things picked up big time, and like I say, it is the most successful aircraft ever built. I think there's about 10,000 odd aircraft that have been built.
Yeah, no, that's it. The exact figure is as of August 21 was 10,766,
which is it's an astonishing amount of planes, and there's still like another 5,000 left to be built in terms of like MAX aircraft that have been ordered. So it can only get higher and higher, and that gives it its title of being the most successful aircraft.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get onto the MAX, but they're obviously suffering a big old backlog of orders at the moment with one thing and another.
They are. But we'll kick things off anyway. So, Steve, do you want to sort of get the ball rolling on the 737? We'll start with the sort of the first generation, and that's the 100 and 200s.
Oh yeah, so the original 737s actually had different engines from what you'd see today, which were the Pratt Whitney JT8D engines, which are sort of long torpedo sort of shaped engines on them before sort of the 400s, 300s sort of came in and changed to what we're used to today. But when they switched from the 100 to the 200, they actually had to increase the engine by 14,000 pounds because the performance had dropped off by 5% when they increased the size and length of the aircraft there. So they had to sort of tweak it as the aircraft got bigger. But it was only 76 inches longer. It was from the 100 to the 200, but it was enough to affect the performance by that much.
And like I said, it wasn't successful to begin with in terms of sort of sales. Sales were very low to start off with. I think only three carriers actually ordered the 100 version, which is sort of the smallest one of the lot. Airlines being along the lines of Lufthansa, which ordered 22, Malaysia, Singapore Airlines, before they obviously separated and became their own brand, they ordered 5, and 2 went to Avianca. And yeah, so it's not a great deal. It's not a great amount, and I'm sure at the time Boeing would have sat there and gone, "This probably hasn't worked." Diving into sort of a small kind of niche market for such an aircraft.
Yeah, no, it's it. But interestingly, there's still a couple of the 200s still flying around. There's one with Nolan Aviation, which is a 1974 200, which is doing Montreal to the sort of outlying northern Canadian towns to sort of provide a link to them and what have you. And a Jet Air is flying a 1978 200 for oil works in Lagos in Nigeria there. So there's a couple of them that still haven't quite been retired, but they're getting so old that they won't be far off now, clearly.
Yes, I want to bring Ian on this one in terms of the sort of the 100 and 200s. There is obviously one around in terms of the 737-100, which is a NASA one, which is currently on display. It's the only one in the world. Have you ever sort of had the privilege of witnessing 737-200?
I'll be honest with you, I can't say I have, to be quite honest. I'm looking for when the engine change was more than anything else. So you really differentiate then, can't you, with the engine change? Well, not a 200 or a 100 either, to be quite honest. I mean, when was the 200 retired? I'm just looking now. So
there's a couple still knocking about, but
like you said, there's a couple knocking around. But no, I can't say I've seen one at all.
Well, I think Boeing did it so well, didn't they, that 200s, 100s became very dated quite quickly, and especially the old engines obviously weren't quite as fuel efficient, so people weren't sort of uptaking them when they put the better, more efficient, more powerful engines on them.
Yeah, they had to sort of forward mount them as well, didn't they? Because the other ones were under wing mounted, which gave them the sort of low profile of the actual aircraft. But when they wanted the bigger, I suppose the large intake turbofans, aren't they? They had to sort of forward mount them, didn't they? So they wouldn't actually hit the ground, and that's why they had to have that. Did they call it a hamster pouch or something? The actual shape of the intake, because it's got the flat bottom, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, no, it could well be. I'm not overly sure on that, but it could well be.
Yeah,
they did.
That could have been later.
Yeah, they have preserved at least one of the 100s in the aviation museum in Seattle there. So they sort of kept a little bit of the original history of them, which is good.
Yeah, I think they would have had to, wouldn't they? I mean, it's become an absolute icon, hasn't it? A 737. I mean, I forgot what you called it yesterday, Steve. But
pigeons of the sky, isn't it? You just see them everywhere.
I suppose they are, aren't they? They're absolutely everywhere, aren't they? Everyone has a 737, don't they? And absolute icons, and I think they have to be preserved, don't they? I think they'd have to be.
Yeah, especially the original one. Obviously, it became so iconic. But like Tom said, when they first sort of brought them out, they weren't the roaring success that we're used to today. It was only sort of the next gen where they really started sort of picking up on the orders and what have you. So it was a gamble from Boeing.
Yeah, I think it was, weren't it? But I mean, round about that time as well, you sort of, I think all the limelight would have probably been taken off it onto the 747, because it was that time when they were developing 747 as well, weren't it? So everybody were more interested in what were going on in that department rather than 737s, weren't they? So maybe that played a part in it.
It sort of took over from the old Dan airplanes, didn't it? The Comets were they?
Yeah, old Comets, yeah.
Yeah, that was sort of the progression, because they were 3x3, whereas the Dan Airs were 2x3 or 2x2, whatever they were. So they offered more passenger numbers at a better sort of range economy and all that sort of business, and the airlines obviously took to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you say, I mean, it started off slow, didn't it? But over the next couple of models, I would imagine, it's really like, it soon gathered momentum and soon got a name for itself, didn't it? Definitely. Everyone wanted them at that point, didn't they?
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, moving from sort of the 100, which obviously there was designed for it to be a T-tail aircraft.
Yeah,
there we go, T-tail aircraft, and obviously plans for it to do that. I think it was there was I think that by the time it had come out, I think the first DC-9 came out. I think it was DC-9-10 that came out, and it was kind of to sort of challenge that one. So it's a challenge to DC-9-10 to try and drive sales away from McDonnell Douglas, which didn't actually happen because I think DC-9, I think the 10 and the 20 series were quite popular, and so obviously it kicked Boeing's backside, and it was like, right, we need to do something to sort of try and do something a bit better. And then obviously they released the 200, which, as we know, went on to be sort of a cornerstone really for Boeing to kind of put their name on the map, which they already had done through the likes of the 707 and things like that. But to bring out a new 737 to, like I say, directly compete with, it was more modern at the time to what was being offered by McDonnell Douglas. And obviously, like I said, it then became a very popular aircraft with many, many airlines.
It was incredible. They could churn out from start to finish in 11 days the 737-200, and you think it had? Let me just check 1 second. 367,000 components, and they were getting them done and delivered within 11 days. It's outstanding how quick they were doing them. It
is. It's almost like a wartime kind of sort of speed in order for them to be sort of built, and it's frightening how quick they were built. And you think about nowadays where the aircraft now are so much more modern now, and they just have to be so intricate when they're being put together. So it's weird to see that it's almost like aviation in terms of the aircraft has gone forward, but the production of them seems to have gone backwards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, on that same sort of stats I saw, somewhere in the world there's a 737 taken off every 2 seconds on average. That's sort of how globally popular we're sort of discussing tonight.
It is. It's frightening. The original 200. There's three different variants. The original passenger version actually had its first flight about. Let me do some quick mental maths here. About 4 months. 4 months. Not very good. 4 months after the 100 did, and you can tell by then just how
popular
it was. Because
let me get rid of my pictures.
Ian's
we'll just have a plain background. I'll think about that.
18 minutes in, and we've got our first "You've Been Framed" moment. Well done.
That's it. I think that's definitely worth a like on there. So all right, but you can instantly tell like how quick the rise in popularity the 737-200 got, because, like I say, only 30 of the 100 variants were ordered. But as soon as this 200 variant came out, that shot up to like 900 odd orders across so many different airlines. So airlines clearly wanted to kind of have an aircraft that was independent to the DC-9, and also be able to create something that was just going to sort of help the airlines at the time try and reach out to more routes. And like I say, you got the original passenger version, you got the convertible version, as we know, which is sort of, I think it's a combi, so it's like cargo at the front, passengers at the back, and then of course the military version, which they call the T-43, which obviously went to the US Navy, US Air Force, I should say. 19 of those went there. So this, for me, is where it started to gain like its popularity, is with 200. And I've seen a couple of the 200s, and it's a fantastic aircraft. I'm just going to point out one of the comments here that we've got from Grey Blue. And she says, your pictures didn't last long.
Yeah, I got her to stick them up for me, so I'll have to. I don't want to damage them. No, I'll have to have a think about that.
And seeing as we were talking about you being frame moments.
Yeah, it sends out to you being connected to 250 quid. Yes. Yeah, but you have to spend it on merch.
Yes. We'll discuss merch at the end. Obviously,
I'm getting nervous for my picture now because I think we've got the same method of keeping it up in.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah. He said, no, you.
My blue tack's from Poundland.
But yeah, there's DC-1 still 200 still registered to people, but obviously with what's gone on, 68 of those are currently in storage. So I think they will, unfortunately, sort of be a distant memory before too long now, especially with the age in them or what have you.
Well, they're very reliable over in Canada. Canada seems to be sort of the place to nurture the 200s because they're used for, I think, multiple of get me words out. An amount of them have gravel kits, so they'll operate in like your most sort of back end of nowhere, should we say? I was going to say arse end out of nowhere, but
yeah, they use them in north of Canada, don't they? They used to do on I forget the name of the program. Those like ice road truckers and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Diamond mine
up to like
documentaries
Fairbanks,
and things
wherever
like
it was.
that.
Yeah,
they used to use the converted ones, didn't they? Where it was half freight and half passengers. And to be fair, I don't know whether this is right or not, but were they not the first to do the conversion?
Oh, it's not
as in the
something I
combi
saw.
sort of thing.
Sorry?
Like you mean like turning them into like combi aircraft with like cargo at the
Yeah,
front?
into a combi aircraft. Yeah, because they really put the. I think they were always pushing the envelope a little bit further, weren't they? They were always trying to think of something new they could do with this to make it take off, and the combis, they used to use the standard cargo floor, didn't they, with the cargo pallet lock sort of things on to lock the seats in, didn't they? So they could did they cut it down from something like converting a full 737 from a passenger plane to cargo plane used to take 5 hours, but they managed to get that down to an hour just by sort of redesigning the floor and using different locking systems and things like that. And I think they were always trying to push that a little bit further, weren't they? And try and always get one-upmanship on their competitors, I suppose, weren't they?
Well, at the time, it was deemed as like revolutionary to be able to kind of convert an aircraft like that so quickly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
and to say that they're still using them today is testament to how they stood the test of time, haven't they? And they're
massively
flying in
reliable.
some proper harsh conditions, aren't they?
Massively reliable. Still, even to this day. So yeah, honestly, I remember I've got memories of them. I've had the privilege of witnessing many 737-200s and things like that. And yeah, they are very reliable for airlines, sort of that are trying to help out their communities and stuff, especially nowadays. So. Yeah, it's reliable, and I imagine they'll probably be around for a few more years before these airlines sort of replace them with sort of modern but still older 737-300s, which is what we'll jump onto now. So yeah, let's move on to the 737-300, which again was highly successful with many airlines, and this was the first of the 737 family, which is classed as the classics, to have its engines changed and everything else about it sort of redeveloped to kind of. I suppose at the time it was after the sort of realization that airlines wanted more capacity, wanted more sort of, more range. And obviously upgrade the aircraft as well. So by doing this, they obviously re-engined the aircraft with CFM 56 turbofan engines to replace the noisy and very polluting JT8Ds. Yeah, by doing this then brought a whole load more airlines in to be able to order the aircraft.
Yeah, and I said they produced 1,113, which accounted for over 50% of the 737s sold in the first year, sort of compared to the 100, 200. Although, unfortunately, less than 10% remain this day. There was 109 still sort of left in service. Where is it now? Canadian North Airways still run a couple of them, but again, they're sort of a bit of a dying breed. But who else? People Liberation Army of China have got a couple as well. So they're still about.
Yeah.
They're not They're not about.
They are. They're more sort of nowadays. They're kind of you see them more as freighters more than anything. Um, so, but we'll jump onto the freighter sort of side of it shortly. Um, but the reason they kind of added extra capacity, added extra range, was because of the fact that they wanted to compete with, again, it's that rivalry between the two of uh, McDonnell Douglas and obviously Boeing, with McDonnell Douglas. Put my teeth in tonight if I'll remember if I do that. The MD-80 sort of series, to again go head to head with them and to produce a more fuel efficient aircraft, which would sort of challenge McDonnell Douglas and try and outsail the MD-80.
Yeah,
Was the MD-80 not a longer range aircraft though than the 737? Did it have a longer range?
I think it did. I think it had longer range, but I think given that this was at a time where it was a few years after the sort of the oil crisis or something, which killed off a lot of the older aircraft.
Yeah, very true.
I think that kind of also plays a part in why some airlines were sort of shying away from sort of your aircraft that we know as noisy.
Yeah.
But it definitely sort of at the time became a game changing aircraft anyway. But both sold both sold really, really well. But the 737-300 was sort of unveiled at the Farnborough Air Show in 1980.
Yeah.
And obviously, like I say, it kicked off the classic generation for the 737s, and of course the re-engining of the 737, of course, also was picked up on by the US Air Force, because, as we know, the Air Force re-engined their 707s with the exact engine that is with the 737.
The problem with all these sort of earlier 737s is they're all sort of getting to the lifespan. The ones that are still flying now are between 22 and 34 years old, so they're sort of very much approaching the end of life for their service and what have you, which is obviously a shame. But there's only so many miles the airlines can do before it becomes uneconomical to sort of upkeep them still.
Absolute solid workhorses, though, weren't they? And like Tom was saying just then, when we were talking about the MD-80 and the 737, it was sort of at a point, weren't it, where economy started playing a bigger part in the airline industry back then, didn't it? Like you say, with the noisier aircraft were slowly disappearing, and these more fuel efficient, quieter engines were coming into their own, I suppose, weren't they? After various oil crises and Middle Eastern wars and things like that, but they were looking at more economy, weren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But yeah, out of the classic range, the 3, 4, and 500, it was the best selling out of the three. So they obviously sort of did well on that particular one. I think the general consensus was the 500 was a bit too big, and the 400 wasn't any better than the sort of 300. So they did quite well with the 400s.
Yeah, Rob Brown Planespotting says that the JT8D engines is an awesome sound, though perhaps not the most environmentally friendly, which is very true. It's an awesome sound, used on many of the aircraft before, and yeah, not the most environmentally friendly engine, but gave out one hell of a racket. So it did. So yeah, it was good for, yeah. Loved the aircraft when they had those engines. But yeah, he also goes on to say that Boeing also gave airlines another option in their lineup with the 727, which of course the 737, for those that don't know, it's got aspects of the 707 and the 727 with the nose and sort of cockpit layout sort of thing. As well. So if you look at the nose of an older style 737, you'll see the similarities between that and the 707. But I know little about flying machines, so it's fine. Any of you had the privilege of flying on a 737-300?
Not knowingly, to be quite honest.
Same, yeah. I'm not sure whether I have or not.
What about
I
you,
did.
Tom?
Yeah, I did. I flew it when Flybe had them in the fleet, and it was probably one of the best flights I've had. It's a comfortable plane to fly on. I was 12 at the time, but I was still knowing enough about what it was like to fly on the plane, and it was super comfortable, and it was wonderful, especially for a long flight to Tenerife. So yeah, so it was good fun. It was good fun. Of the orders for the 737-300, it was a very popular plane with a lot of airlines. We spoke about Southwest Airlines on episode 15, which was 12 episodes ago. Mental. They were the launch customer for the 737-300, and a whopping 1,113 of these planes were ordered, which is a lot, and it gives you an idea for what kind of like a kind of workhorse aircraft that it actually is.
Definitely, I think at this particular point in its life, it's got a reputation now, hasn't it? And people are liking it, aren't they, and trusting it. So, yeah, particularly the American carriers. Sorry, Steve.
I was going to say Boeing obviously stumbled on a bit of a winning formula and ironed out the creases with the first sort of two.
I think they used it as like a testing kind of like a testing platform sort of thing to see what they could do in order to kind of gain a bit of momentum with trying to, like say, compete with McDonnell Douglas and that with the DC-9s and the MD-80s and stuff. So for them to create an aircraft or modernize a 737-200 into a 300 and then have it do so well, like I say, made them become a huge player in the aircraft manufacturing market.
Well, that's it. And once you've sort of sealed the reputation that what you've produced is good, when you start building your variants, then people are already in the know that what you've got is a solid plane for their fleet going forward.
Definitely. Definitely. No sort of other variants were made of the 737-300 until sort of later on. So again, your combis are in there, and obviously, like I say, the freighters that were, the freighters that were created out of old passenger planes. Of course, Ian, you know yourself, West Atlantic operate a 737-300 into Wharton in the north of England, doing sort of. Is it staff or is it?
No, it's freight. It's
freight.
Yeah, it's Typhoon points going to Cyprus, flying to Akrotiri, Akrotiri in Cyprus and Saudi. So yeah, they fly ports out there. Yeah, that's a regular service, and it's because I follow that particular plane closely. It's always pinging up on my flight radar, and it's never rested. It's always doing something. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a pretty good range to get from Wharton here up near Preston down to Cyprus. It's a fair road trek, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it does really well.
Definitely. So the 737-300 had a passenger honestly, we'll go again. Had a passenger capacity of 149, and this was by extending the fuselage around the wing by 9 feet and 5 inches. They also extended the wingtip by 9 inches and extended the wingspan by nearly 2 feet. They also redesigned the tail fin. The flight deck was improved, and a passenger cabin was also improved as well. And oddly enough, obviously Boeing at the time were designing the 757. They incorporated the 757's cabin into the 737. They didn't know that.
No, I also read as well about the 737 when when I think it was it might have been the 200 or it might have been the 300. Yeah, it would have been the 300. When they put the new engines on it, there was no room, and it was too heavy to put a fuel dumping system into it. So they never had a fuel dump on it either, did they? So you actually built the plane strong enough that it could still land on. It could, if it needed to land, it could do, which I think is quite ingenious. Yeah. I think it's quite an ingenious idea, isn't it? If it needs to land, it can do. You have to dump fuel.
Not something you would see nowadays, I don't think, because I think
definitely not.
It's more all about like safety first. I think more than anything. So I think most aircraft will come equipped with, like a fuel dumping system. But
Absolutely.
Interesting to have read earlier about the fact that it didn't have one. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think a modern aircraft could land now with fuel in it anyway, could it? I think it'd just be too heavy. The wings would be too heavy, wouldn't they?
Well, they would have to. They would have to dump it first.
They'd have to, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
With all these carbon fibers and what have you.
That's it. Yeah, they would have to. 100% dump the fuel first. Before actually, going into land. Obviously, the 737s themselves are very unique because of the landing gear as well. So on a typical plane, it has a landing gear door. The 737 doesn't, and obviously that's why you see when they go overhead, you have the wheels sort of almost like they're on show to everyone. So it's by far and away a unique aircraft in terms of what they actually did with the design of it. But it is a fascinating.
And what do you think the idea is behind that, with having no doors covering the wheels? Just because there wasn't, they could do without it. I don't know. Weight.
I'm fairly certain it's something to do with the with just the overall design of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that's why.
Yeah.
I suppose another component less to go wrong, isn't it? A little bit of cost cutting on it.
Yeah. I mean, with the amount of planes they've made, and if they've saved all that money on those little bits of aluminium covering them wheels up over years, they've saved a lot of money, haven't they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, so on the scale.
Yeah. So a comment there from Rob Brown Planespoint says that this was built in an era where Boeing built bulletproof aircraft, where engineering led the decision-making process, such as the US Air Force KC-135s, which have survived for 50-odd years, 737s in the same ballpark. So yeah, definitely a fascinating sort of time for aviation. But yeah, it's such a workhorse of any fleet that it's been in. But yes, before we carry on, we'll go to a couple more comments that are in there. So do you want to have a little read of those, Ian?
Yeah, I can do. Aviation 19, he says he thinks it's for the gravity gear drop. That I'm presuming he's going back to the doors on the 737, quite possibly.
That's it.
But I mean, airplanes are equipped with that anyway. The only other thing I could think of was the actual width of the two wheels sort of being folded up underneath. Maybe they would have had to go in another 6 to 8 inches into the body or something. It would have reduced fuel capacity or something like that. Taking a bit more of the fuel tank space up or something like that. For the door to tilt over the top of it.
Yeah,
I'm sure that. Yeah, possibly. Ryan Bonner, hello all. I've flown every model of the 737, but I only love the JT8D powered 100s and 200s. The quiet ones suck. I think when you've experienced a 100 and a 200, I think anything else after that would do, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's like I say, I've never flown on the sort of the older ones, but the classic ones do make a hell of a noise. But I can see where he's coming from. It's you don't want to kind of have too quiet. You want to hear that roar. You want to feel that kind of experience.
Yeah, that's it. I might have to look on YouTube. I bet the noise out of one of them JT8Ds now, it's fantastic, isn't it?
It must be absolutely incredible. Turns out the landing gear, which is under the wings, rotates the rotates into wheel wells for the aircraft. Blah, blah. Honestly, the 737's main landing gear under the wings at mid-cabin rotates into wheel wells into the aircraft's belly. The legs are covered by partial doors, so there are doors for the landing gear. It just means that the wheels are left on show.
Exposed, aren't they? Yeah.
So it says that the sides of the tyres are exposed to the air in mid-flight, and what they call hubcaps complete the aerodynamic profile of the wheels. And apparently it's forbidden for the aircraft to operate without the caps because they are linked to the ground speed sensor that interfaces with the anti-skid brake system. So it could eventually set it off. So while you're in the air, which I don't think is going to be a good thing, but yeah, it is quite a fascinating thing and they've kept that design all throughout, even on the Max aircraft. So
yeah, it's interesting they stayed with it, even with sort of changing times and what have you.
Definitely. Yeah.
We'll move on to the 400, which was the sort of the stretch variant of the 737-300, launched in 1985. This was to fill the gap between the 737-300 and the 757-200, which by this point had already come out and had already been sort of a few years in service. Boeing decided to stretch the fuselage by a further 10 feet, increasing the capacity to 188 passengers, and required a tail bumper to prevent tail strikes during takeoff, obviously because of the sheer length of the aircraft.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
The first flight for the 737-400 was on February 19th, 1988. And after 7 months of testing and trying to get its flight certificate, entered service with, I can't pronounce that airline, Piedmont. It's an old American airline that's now sort of no longer with us, but entered service in October 1988. So, the last two aircraft were delivered in February of 2000 to Czech Airlines. And of course, now again, they are converted to freighters nowadays, and we see a lot of them again, Ian, with West Atlantic.
Absolutely. I think they made good freighters, particularly because it made them into a 9-pallet freighter instead of an 8-pallet freighter. So it gave them that extra bit of pallet space at the back there. So, yeah, popular.
Yeah, you're right about the freighter because only 13 of them still exist as passenger aircrafts, and they all seem to be down in South Africa with a company called Safair, and they're just flying sort of internal South African flights, and they're only expecting to be able to sell 4 million seats this year, which sounds a lot, but you think every plane's got sort of 180 seats or whatever. It's not that many over the course of a year, is it?
No, well, I think each plane's flying over 1,000 passengers a day, aren't they? With the amount of flights they can cover in a day.
Yeah. And again, it's another reliable aircraft. Obviously this led to Boeing sort of replacing the 737-400s with obviously the new gen aircraft, which we'll get onto shortly. But they obviously decided once they were sort of out of their passenger commitments, turned them into special freighters. And obviously, I think the biggest probably, at least off the top of my head, the biggest sort of operators of them were probably Alaska Airlines. They were the first to convert one. So they were retired in 2017 and then replaced by the 737-700, which obviously then were turned into freighters as well. So a reliable aircraft, flown for the likes of British Airways. I'm trying to off the top of my head, Air Europa, US Airways as well. Big players, heavily relied on this aircraft.
Yeah, so they've obviously gone on to sort of a cargo freighter life these days, but I did get the impression they weren't overly popular as passenger aircraft when they came out, sort of from reading through everything.
Well, they weren't as popular as the 737-300, only 486 were delivered. But obviously, like I say, it was that stopgap between the 757 and the 737-300, bit like what it is now with the with the 757s leaving the skies. They would needed something to kind of fill the gaps. So obviously, the A321s are doing that. So it's kind of almost like that scenario, but back like 20, 30 years ago.
I'm just going roughly back to when we were talking about the 747 not long ago, and there was a sort of a lull, weren't there, in sales for the 747-400 as well? What didn't sell very well, and was that not round about the same sort of era, around the late 80s sort of thing?
So so late 80s when the aircraft came into play was around the same time that, of course, Airbus were coming into play with the A320.
Yeah.
So I think that had a huge impact on sales and that. And I think had Airbus either delayed the A320 or sort of pushed it back or didn't even do it at all, then I think a lot more airlines would probably have ordered the.
Well, I think Airbus, when they first brought the 320s out and things like that, it was it were revolutionary, weren't it? Using fly-by-wire and things like that, weren't it? Boeing was still relying on cables, weren't they? And
that's it.
There's a big difference, isn't there? So I think the technology might have been playing a part in sort of that sort of sticky patch for them, I would imagine.
Late 80s, there was probably social economics at play as well.
Yeah.
With troubles with finances and banks and all that. So maybe the investment wasn't quite there, and airlines were a bit nervous of sort of a sticky time in in general.
It probably was a sticky time in aviation, I would imagine. I can't recall back. I'm just trying to think, because in '88 you've sort of got like the end of the Afghan-Russian war sort of thing, and then you've got Saddam Hussein and Kuwait and things like that in late '80s, and all that started kicking off back then as well, didn't it? Before the first Gulf. I mean, it was a couple of years before the first Gulf War, but it was round about that time there were probably a bit of an oil crisis and everyone getting a bit twitchy, weren't they, over at Middle Eastern oil reserves and things like that. So that probably played a massive part as well.
Yeah,
I think even on home soil, things weren't particularly comfortable, were they, in the late 80s? So I know there was certain sort of like government troubles and that, without going too far into it, which might have sort of knocked.
I mean, it's when
confidence.
poll tax first started coming out and things like that, weren't it, back in the late 80s? And bad times.
Yeah, that's it. So 737-400, we see quite a few of those now plodding around like East Midlands and sort of many different sort of cargo hubs now as well. So they're obviously, again, another one of the workhorses now, that are sort of having a sort of a second life, really.
Yeah, like a resurrection for cargo. Sort of the days of passenger planes are, unless you live in South Africa, as good as over. But they've certainly re-engineered themselves into being quite a decent cargo carrier.
There was a cargo conversion specialist, I suppose you want to call him, who actually managed to make it into a 10 pallet conversion as well, rather than a 9 pallet. So you've gone 2 pallets up on a 300. So they did make really, really good freighters.
Yeah, and I've said a little bit of sort of diversity in what they could do, and it's obviously helped them stay in the skies a little bit longer than some of their predecessors.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then we sort of move on from there to sort of they sort of went back a little bit, but also at the same time went a hell of a lot forward in terms of the 737-500, which was a modern direct replacement of the older 737-200. It was just they had a change in engine, obviously again with the CFM engines, and Southwest were the first to receive the 500 back in February of 1990. So this incorporated the improvements of the 737 Classic aircraft, allowing longer routes for fewer passengers to be more economical than the 737-300. So it's almost like they sort of looked at the 737-300 and just went, well, how can we make this a bit more sort of eco-friendly? and they shortened the fuselage down by 7 feet. And sort of keeping in touch with the 200, they made the fuselage a little bit longer than the 200. But yeah, so it's one of those aircraft that is kind of, did Boeing really need to build it?
Yeah, and there's not that many left now. There's a company called Bahamas who've got 3 of them, which were former Southwest planes. But interestingly, those planes, Southwest took them out of service in 2016, and they sat around for 4 before they actually ended up backing someone else. But Southwest tended to use the 737-500s mainly sort of in Texas, doing flights around Texas rather than sort of all over the country, from sort of what I've seen researching it earlier on today.
Yeah. So again, it's not a popular aircraft. Only I think a handful of these were made. Like I say, the airlines such as like Aer Lingus use these. British Midland, of course, used them as well. Which obviously were transferred over to BMI Baby, and in total, not far off the sales of the 400. So it was 389 of the 500s were actually built. So it's it still had a huge amount of operators, just not onto the sort of the popular sort of the popularity of the 737-300.
No, it looks like direct competition for a 319, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, at the time they didn't know that 319 was coming out. I think this was more inclined to do with sort of airlines that were operating the 737-200 that maybe thought that 737-300 and 400 were maybe too much aircraft. So this kind of fit the bill perfectly.
Yeah.
Which is why Southwest took a good handful of them to replace obviously the 200s.
Yeah, they were flying them on 144 routes at one point, Southwestern, but sort of as they updated their fleet, like I said just a minute ago, they just seem to stick to flying around Texas with them and letting the newer Gen 1s sort of do the further domestic flights for them.
Yeah, it is. It's an aircraft that like I said, it serves like plenty of airlines. I think there was a Russian airlines. There was a Russian airline, Polkovo, I think it is. Aeroflot also used theirs as well. So yeah, it's an aircraft that sort of, like I said, just fit that bill really between those that were looking for compact aircraft as opposed to, in terms of too much plane is just not good enough for them, and they probably wouldn't be able to fill the seat sort of thing.
I suppose you're still in the era as well of like Rob Brown was saying, you coal miners strikes and things like that, and going back to the late 80s and things like that, where there were not, very low confidence in quite a lot of things, and they were just passenger numbers just weren't there, and maybe that was just the right plane at the right time, weren't it? I suppose.
Yeah. So if the problems don't exist in America regards sort of minor strike poll tax, Boeing are obviously going to still produce the planes, but they're not necessarily going to make their way onto these shores, are they, at that point? So it sort of skews how popular they were, perhaps, because people weren't willing to take that much of a punt on them this side of the water.
Yeah, very true, very true.
Very true indeed. So that's our sort of look into the classic versions of the 737. Now it gets a bit tricky because we move on to sort of the new gen aircraft, and this is where Boeing sort of wanted to kind of give something a little bit more, and they were looking into modernizing aircraft that they had literally only just released. And we start off with sort of the 737-600, which is known as the sort of the least successful of the new gen aircraft, because if you compare the numbers, the 737-700, which we'll move on to shortly, 1,128 deliveries. The 737-800, I mean, 2 are still to be delivered, but it's at the moment at a whopping 4,989. The 737-600 obviously didn't capture much attention because it only had 69 deliveries. So what do we think sort of went wrong with the 737-600?
Yeah, well, say it was never a popular airline, was it? And there's only 12 left in active use today across 3 operators, being Janet for US Air Force. WestJet have got a few, but they're not sort of really flying around as much as they were. So obviously, maybe if it was so similar to what Boeing had produced before, people didn't see the need to sort of splash the money on updating them if they weren't that much different from the sort of 3, 4, or 500s.
Yeah, well, that's it. I think the problem with the 737-600 was it was essentially a re-winged, re-engined 737-500, which again, as we saw, didn't really sort of take off in terms of sales. And this kind of was almost like a bit of a kick in the teeth for Boeing, because obviously they would have thought that, you know, going for an aircraft that's got a different engine and different wing and probably a bit more fuel efficient didn't really take off, sort of thing. And, you know, like I say, Scandinavian, I think, were probably the biggest operator of them, which of course they've now retired them.
Yeah, they
So
had
like I say,
30 of
WestJet
them.
have got, yeah. So they say WestJet obviously still have theirs. There's a couple knocking around for I think Janet as well, but not a popular aircraft at all. And they say it's obviously very similar to the Airbus A318.
Yeah, the main route it's doing now is Algeria to Marseille, operated by Air Algeria. So they're not they're certainly not in the skies anymore. But like you say, Scandinavian were the biggest operator with 30 of them. But even then, they were still doing domestic flights of them. They weren't really taking them overseas too much, to the
No.
point that 80% of the 30 planes they had were actually just doing domestic flights in Scandinavia by the time they sort of got bored of them.
Yeah, that's it. Ryan Bomar saying that 737-600 and the A318 were miscalculations by the manufacturers. The tails and wings were too big for the frame, which led to issues. So again, that probably contributed to.
I was actually just reading something about that, and I've lost the page I was on.
And I stand corrected, or we stand corrected. Aviation 19 saying that WestJet actually retired their 737-600. So, yeah, obviously another one that's kind of booted them out.
Yeah, I don't want to. Well, I don't want to contradict, and the internet isn't the kind of oracle of everything. But apparently, they are starting to sell seats again as of August 21 on the 600. So, quite possibly, they might get them out of storage. But again, the internet isn't the oracle, and if I'm wrong, then I apologise.
No, if the internet can successfully diagnose issues, then I think you can probably tell you if a WestJet 737-600 is retired or not. But yeah, definitely not a popular aircraft at all. I actually had, I think, when on a trip to Kemble, I actually saw a fuselage of a 737-600 that was just sat in the parking area. Waiting to be transported off elsewhere, and you know, it was sad to know that I've probably got pictures of these aircraft, and you know, they're now no longer around. But then you can't really blame them if, like Ryan Bomar said, if there was sort of miscalculations with the designs and stuff, and just in the end just weren't really desirable.
No, it says here that on this thing I was looking at here that the aircraft was disproportionately heavy for its payload, and one pilot, a test pilot, actually said it was a little longitudinally unstable, and a colleague once described them to me as having the flying characteristics of a wobbly arrow. Yeah, and that was a 737-600.
Fair enough.
But yeah, obviously in this category we've got the biggest hitter of them all, but the 600 only accounted for 3% of the next gen sales for Boeing. That's how poorly it did.
That is, yeah, that tells you everything you need to know about what it was like as an aircraft, and whether sort of airlines sort of thought it was desirable or not.
But yeah, they obviously got it wrong. But as we sort of go through this next gen, that you'll obviously
Absolutely.
hear that they got it absolutely right shortly.
Yeah, yeah. Before we move on to that, do get your do keep getting your comments in, and we will show them throughout the show while we're here for hopefully about another hour or so. As we sort of, like I say, continue our little dive into the world of the 737. But as Steve mentioned, they moved on to the 700, which of course they did get right in the end, which I think was they actually launched this idea or the concept in 1993, which makes I didn't know that at all, that they launched it that far back. But this is the kind of as a direct replacement for the 737-300 aircraft, a very popular aircraft with many airlines such as Southwest, off the top of my head, Continental, obviously now United, as well, Alaska Airlines. There's plenty out there to sort of describe. Obviously, Scandinavian as well were big users of the 737-700, still are. So yeah, the aircraft itself ranges from 126 passengers in two class or 149 passengers in a one class layout. The first delivery was 1997 to Southwest Airlines, and it obviously competes with the Airbus A319. Highly successful, this aircraft, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of Southwest, their initial order was for 63 of them, so they obviously saw a bit of potential in them, and they've ended up selling a couple on to Avilo Airlines, who ordered 3. So they bought a couple of 13-year-old of the 700 straight off Southwest in their fleet.
Yeah, you can tell how successful it is when you've got 1,128 orders that have been delivered across different variants. Of course, the 700 also received winglets, but that was obviously first done on the 737-800. The 737-600 never got winglets. As far as I'm concerned, I still don't think they have any, just because there ain't no point putting it on an aircraft that's probably going to be retired soon anyway. But yeah, you got the combi version, as we mentioned earlier, that Alaska Airlines obviously now do with that, and now they're getting converted to freighters, and there's a couple of freighters knocking around. I think India. I think there's a couple of freighters in India for SpiceJet, I think, if I'm correct. But yeah, like I said, highly successful, and sort of exactly what airlines needed in terms of that next step to change from the 300s to 700 and get a bit more range out of it.
Yeah, this you say about how many we produce. There's still so many in service as well. Sort of even now, but they're obviously a decent aircraft and more than capable of doing sort of what the airlines and sort of the cargo companies want out of them. So they're a decent aircraft.
Yeah, I know United use them still. They use a lot of them still, and I'm literally off the top of my head, just trying to think of them. Obviously, the U.S. Air Force or the Marine Corps, the C-40. That's the aircraft as well. That obviously still flies with obviously along with the Air Force One and things like that. And of course, Australia used theirs for they got that T T-tail kind of radar on the back of theirs as well. If you've not seen that, so again, it's like is it the air? They call it an airborne early warning and control version.
Yeah, like an AWACS type thing.
Like an AWACS kind of aircraft. Yeah.
I thought the US Navy as well, they were using them for sort of anti-submarine work as well, weren't they? Was that the 700? Or were that an earlier variant? I'm just reading then about the C-40s, and they were using the 737, I'm sure it was a 700, for anti-submarine warfare, if you want, and they were using them to detect submarines and actually carrying anti-submarine warfare, dropping torpedoes from them and things like that as well. So they were very, very versatile, weren't they?
Very versatile, and it was the first sort of new gen aircraft to turn into a sort of a military version. So yeah, it's got its uses, and like I say, the more we get into the 737s, new gen, and of course Maxes, we'll see immediately sort of just how increasingly popular they are with military forces. But yeah, so I mean, talking of military forces, we'll move on to the probably the most successful new gen aircraft of the lot. Steve, Jack Roll says hello.
Oh, evening, Jack. I hope you're good, mate, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Wants to know how are you?
Yep, all good. Can't complain.
But yeah, so the 737-800, the most successful new gen aircraft of the lot, nearly a whopping 5,000 of these were built. Still a couple to be delivered. Huge like amount of aircraft for certain operators such as Delta, American, United, Ryanair, of course, have got a massive handful. And yeah, so it's definitely a hugely successful aircraft with many operators, and of course the US Navy and of course the RAF use the military version, which is the P-8 Poseidon, for what Ian said, which is the anti-submarine warfare radar sort of thing.
Yeah.
So this was introduced back in 1994, which was sort of the first time that it was unveiled as a project. So this was also used to replace the 737-400, as we sort of said earlier, and any aging 727s of US airlines. It also filled the gap left by Boeing's decision to discontinue the MD-80 and MD-90 aircraft from production following the merger of Boeing and McDonnell Douglas. And as we know, it competes with the A320. Thoughts on the 737-800?
Well, it's obviously iconic. You can't visit an airfield in, well, I dare say, the world of any sort of standard and not see a 737-800 during the day. They're just ridiculously popular, aren't they? But they've done it because the fuel efficiency, the reliability, passenger capacity, the fact they can fly at a ceiling of 41,000 feet makes them sort of more fuel efficient, able to get where they're going that much quicker, and just reliable, aren't they? They're sort of the Ford Fiesta of the sky, almost.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. It came as like I say, a couple of different options, and now obviously they're starting to become freighter aircraft as well. Obviously, the likes of, I think the biggest operator of them in Europe is, of course, Ryanair, who have got mountains of them. I don't know the exact number, but they've got a lot of them.
450 million as of 2020, which equates to £18 billion worth of aircraft.
So it's in terms of money, it's a lot of aircraft. I don't know what that's like for numbers of exact aircraft, but it is.
But yeah, passenger-wise, Ryanair. This is per year, 84.2 million seats. Southwestern offer 62 million seats a year, and American Airlines can offer 57 million seats a year on their 737-800 fleets.
Yeah. Of course, Ian, when you go up to Manchester, you tend to see a lot of these 737-800s from Jet2, TUI, Ryanair, etc. What are your thoughts?
Like you were saying, they're just iconic, aren't they? You can't go anywhere without seeing a 737, and they've just got everything what everybody needs, haven't they? I mean, the fuel efficiency is probably not as good as what the Maxes are now, but they have the fuel economy. They have, like Steve was saying, they can fly up at 41,000 feet for fuel economy, and it was just, I think they nailed it, didn't they? They actually finally nailed it and got the plane what they wanted after all these. They constantly kept improving over and over and over the years and whatever, and finally got to the 737-800, and I think that was the pinnacle, weren't it? I think that was the plane what was going to make them, really, weren't it? Because they've never looked back, have they?
No, and obviously, like I said, they've continued to improve on these the aircraft by obviously recreating recreating them, re-engine them, and producing the Max aircraft, which we'll obviously we'll get onto shortly. But the likes of to have the confidence from the US Navy and obviously the Royal Air Force to operate a military version of this obviously has a huge amount of confidence in terms of using this aircraft for more than just passenger service.
But yeah, it's just huge. They're just so big, aren't they? Without sort of disrespecting them, they're sort of a bit like McDonald's. It's not fancy, but you know exactly what you're getting every time you sort of step on one or see one, and that. So we're so sort of ingrained in aviation, sort of in our era now, that like Ian said, it's iconic.
It is, and of course, a lot of countries and princes and any sort of higher ups from any country tend to use this for the 737-800s for sort of business jet purposes as well. So it is definitely an aircraft that has been well. I say thought of, but it's high praise if you've got a Saudi king or a prince or anything like that want to operate this plane as their own sort of personal aircraft.
Without sticking you on the spot, how many sort of dignitaries, or whatever, showed up in them at the summit at that time?
Do you know? I think there was only one, but that's because I think because of some countries having to do such shorter flights with them, so they just tend to use smaller aircraft. But I think the ones that we use, I think, was South Africa.
Okay, yeah.
I think the South Africans came in a 737, and I think that was it. Yeah, I think that was it. So just that one, basically. But like I said, that's just purely because certain countries had small trips to make.
I think it's probably as well one of the last bulletproof planes what Boeing have made, isn't it? I mean, we know about problems what they've had more recently, but I would say the 737-800 was probably the most reliable workhorse what had ever come out of Seattle, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Rob Brown Planes Point says there are a lot of military applications, P8s based on the 800, US Air Force and US Navy C-40 Clipper based on the 700. So, yeah, it's a well thought of aircraft to be used sort of in that sort of role.
But yeah, they're pushing. Just looking back at those stats, annually in the world, 890 million seats are available on the 737-800, and 149 airlines are currently using the 800. So
Still a popular plane now, isn't it? There's
Yeah.
still planes that are being used for all sorts. Like I say, cargo, especially now. Again, Ian, West Atlantic started to use them on the what they call the Boeing converted freighter
That's
program.
it. But I think they only ever received that one, didn't they? West Atlantic.
I think they got a couple, but they've sort of a few of them have gone off to Sweden as well. But yeah, there's loads of Amazon as well in America. They've got theirs as well. So it's a the plane will be around for a long time.
Definitely.
Malafair, Europeans certainly using at least a couple of them. Bournemouth certainly, but sort of globally they're using them.
Apparently, the Nigerian Air Force operate a 737 presidential jet as well, which I didn't know. So, yeah, it's always good to have sort of info like that sort of pop up onto the chat. So, thank you for that. We'll move quickly on to the 900. Not a great deal to be said about this, but it is the longest version of the 737 new gen. Well, actually, I'll tell you what. Before we do that, we'll quickly move on to the winglets because obviously 737-800 was the first to receive these winglets, which sort of helped develop the aircraft in terms of becoming a more fuel economic aircraft. And of course, there was two different types. Obviously, they had the blended winglet, which came into play first, and then obviously 2014 was the introduction of the split scimitar winglet as well. Very popular, the scimitar one on the likes of TUI and off the top of my head, TUI and who else? I can't think off the top of my head, but blended winglets are...
Yeah, did Norwegian have them? Someone's telling me
Norwegian had them on the Max, I think.
Right.
But blended winglet as well, which is standard in the scimitar one, which was sort of a more developed one, which is what we see now. A more sort of technological winglet on the Max, which we'll jump onto shortly. But the 737-900 was the last sort of variant of the new gen before moving into the Max aircraft. This was moved, sort of the fuselage was extended as well. And there was also an extended range version to this aircraft, which sort of put it directly in competition with their own 757s, and of course directly competing with the Airbus A321. Again, not a big sale, not a big seller. Obviously, the likes of I think KLM, Alaska, and off the top of my head, I'm just trying to think.
Delta,
Korean Air, I think, were the other ones as well. The standard version, only 52 were delivered, but it turns out that the extended range version was more popular with 505 deliveries, which was it had its first flight in September 2006. Very rare to see a extended range 737-900 now. In fact, they're actually quite rare to see themselves, especially in Europe, unless you are seeing KLM aircraft all day, every day. A direct competitor to the A321.
Sorry, I was going to say Lion Air took 78 of the extended range, sort of as the biggest customer of those. But of the 900 standard, Axis Airways and Fly Holland took a couple. Sort of like you said earlier on, Delta, KLM, and Lion seem to be the main customers of that one.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Also, we have... I don't think there's any other versions. There's no freighter versions as yet. So I think the aircraft are still quite... they are still quite new in a way. But we'll go on to sort of what came next, which of course is the Max aircraft, which obviously we all know about. Because of that, we'll talk about the Max as a whole, because obviously the Max 10 has had its sort of first flight and it's in its testing phase and things like that. But yeah, we'll talk about sort of the Max 7, the Max 8, and the Max 9, which I think the Max 8 and Max 9 are in service. Max 7, I think, is yet to enter service. Also had its troubles with obviously the incidents that it's been involved in. But to me, from what I've read, and obviously now that there's no massive news on it, it's kind of showing us what it's all about now, isn't it?
It's quite an exciting aircraft. It's there to compete with the Neos, isn't it? And I think it will probably do a good job. I know maybe consumer confidence might be down a little bit, but I think it's one of those things that people will sort of get over in time when they've been flying a while and they're sort of non-eventful, then people will forget it ever happened. But I do know that at the minute, if you fly on them, you don't actually, on the safety card, they don't actually write the word Max on it. So they try and avoid the fact that it is a Max.
That's it, just purely for the fact that, it just, like I say, it's all about that public confidence.
It is consumer confidence, isn't it? And it's all about the customer at the end of the day, isn't it? You don't want to be worrying. But I agree with what Steve was saying, that given time, that's going to be a well-worthy competitor to pretty much anything that's flying. It's a tried and tested model, isn't it? I think they've obviously redesigned with glass cockpits and God knows what else they've had to do to it, but they've gone from the old standard displays and ways of flying the 737 to a more upgraded version, and obviously they've had the problems and things like that, but they seem to have got it right now, and they find them all out, and I think it can only go from strength to strength from where they're at now. I mean, they've proved themselves, haven't they?
Yeah. So, like I say, because not a lot's being said about it now in terms of issues or things like that, and they've had a lot of time to put the wrongs and turn them into rights, sort of thing. And I think they've probably done that quite well with the introduction of it back into service. Fingers crossed. Now it can finally deliver on what it was actually built for.
I don't know about you, but my confidence to fly in a Max would probably be quite high now, because they would have absolutely gone over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that they weren't about to get more unwanted headlines for Boeing.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's it. They they obviously gone over each and every single issue that they had, and sort of, like I say, fine-tooth comb over each one and make sure that this issue doesn't happen again.
Yeah, there's no way they would have got an operating license if it was anywhere close to being not operational.
Yeah. Ian, what were you going to say?
I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Oh no, I'll tell you what we're going to say. I was just going to say the amount of passengers what have been on a 737 Max since they've been reintroduced again. I mean, already. How long's it been? Just 18 months or so, something like that. 12 months, 18 months, probably.
Something.
Yeah, somewhere in that kind of region, is it? I mean, it's going to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions already, and it's safe. It really, really is, isn't it? It's proved itself. It's proved, if I think if they were going to have another incident, I think it would have happened by now, to be quite honest. And the amount of 737 Maxes have took off and landed since they got reintroduced again has pretty much proved, like Steve was saying, they've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they're not going to find another problem with it.
No. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they've managed to iron out all the wrongs, and hopefully we don't have to sort of see it in the news again.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, yeah, 555 have been delivered as of August 21, so there's plenty around in the skies now. I don't know about you two. I've only seen one in person so far, and that was a lot coming into Heathrow back in April time there.
Yet to see one myself.
I saw the TUI ones up at Manchester, so yeah, there were 5 ports up there for a while, weren't there? But I've lost my train of thought again.
And they got the flared engine covers like the Dreamliner, haven't they?
They
Yeah,
do.
the cheese grate or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
They do indeed. Yeah, they do indeed. We'll just quickly run through the lot. So the 737 MAX 7, which is the shortened variant of the MAX 8, is originally based on the 737-700, of course, flying an extra 1,000 nautical miles further. And it uses the 737-800 wing landing gear. And this is a funny one because you'd have thought that the demand for this from airlines like Southwest and that who Southwest are due to take, I think, the first one, but not until for another couple of years yet. It just seems to me like did we discuss? I'm sure we discussed this the other week where we were saying that it almost feels like it probably won't enter service because of the amount of delays it's had, or did we speak about something else?
Oh, I don't recall it to be honest, but
No, might have been something else. But basically, the Southwest have derived the delivery of the aircraft until 2023-24. So obviously, a little bit more testing needs to be done on that one. But at the same time, I think there is quite a few orders for it, I believe. I could be wrong, but I mean, in total for the MAX aircraft as a whole, you are looking at like 4,500 orders. So this is despite its issues, and that obviously airlines are continuing to back it.
yeah, that's it. And obviously, when they've had that sort of trouble in grounding, it's left them a massive backlog because that was best part of 4,500 unfulfilled orders at the moment, isn't there? Where they're trying to push them out. And I did see Ryanair went in to buy some of the MAX 10s, and they couldn't agree a price with Boeing, so they've sort of pulled out on that. But they were going to order a large amount, but they've just spent 6.7 billion on 210 other ones. So I don't suppose that upset Boeing.
Yeah,
I don't think they're ever going to be short of orders, are they, for Maxes? Like you say, with that many back orders and what have you, the confidence is there, isn't it? The airline operators, they want them, don't they? And they'll get them eventually, won't they?
yeah. So obviously the incidents that happened obviously had a few airlines actually cancel their orders and switch over to sort of the 320 neos. But it's now picking up sort of momentum again in terms of the fact that there were rumours this week that Delta are looking to order some as well. So that's it's good news for Boeing at least. That an airline like Delta, who do operate a ton of 737s, are moving into sort of the MAX territory as opposed to sort of going sort of all neo basically. So it's always good for that. Rob Brown, Plane Spotting, as we were just talking then, said about Ryanair pulling out talks with Boeing for the MAX. Ryanair says obviously Boeing's price is overly optimistic, as you were just saying a minute ago, Ian.
Yeah. Fun fact as well, the galley toilet layout is slightly different, and they've got sliding doors, which enables them to put baby changing facilities in. So there you go.
Full of facts, you are, aren't you?
Yeah.
Fun fact for you.
I can sleep well right now.
We've all been sat next to that screaming baby.
All those Ryanair, all those Ryanair orders, they've only actually picked up them at the moment, and 3 of them are in service. My information might be outdated, but with 210 on order, they're certainly waiting on a large part of the fleet.
There's a huge, oh god, there is a huge backlog of deliveries of the MAX, obviously because of the the fact that they were grounded for so long, and because of the toing and froing of, do we order it, do we not order it, do we cancel it if we've got one, etc. So yeah, it's a strange one, but it to me feels like that things are going into the going up for Boeing in terms of getting that confidence back.
Yeah, just on Ryanair, Jack Rolls asked a question about more of a statement that he wanted to see the Max into Bournemouth. From what I've heard, it's going to be the Malta route, which will be sort of November time. So if you hang on for him, you hopefully see him then.
Is that the Malta Air one, or will that be a Ryanair one?
Ryanair, Ryanair Max, yeah.
Probably operated by Malta Air, I think.
Yeah, because a lot of the Maxes, when they started refulfilling Ryanair's order, went straight to Malta Air, didn't they?
Yeah, so I think Ryanair, for what they've ordered, they're going to sort of half are going to subsidiaries. So you've got Buzz, which is a Polish subsidiary, and you've got Malta Air, which is just, like I said, self-explanatory. It's the Maltese operator of it.
I'm just going to top my water up over a sec.
No problem. Ian has now left us, for those not obviously watching on YouTube. But yeah, Rob Brown Planesporting makes a very good point by saying Ryanair not called it something differently due to high density configuration, which they have. It's the 8200, I believe. Stupid name if you ask me, but I think that's just to kind of hide the fact that it's a Max and just gets the confidence of the people up.
Do you think in 5 years' time, what one will be more prominent and guys, the 20 Neo?
It's a tough one. I would probably go with. I'm more of a Neo person myself, so I want to say. I'm going to say probably Neo. I think the Neo will probably be a bit more prominent to begin with, and then I think as time progresses and the confidence of the 737 Max is like back up to any other aircraft sort of thing. That for me is when you'll probably see sort of a change, so like a flip of the table, and you'll probably see the 737 Max then suddenly become, again, sort of better selling than the Neo.
Yeah, absolutely. But say if Ryanair, Chewy, and Jet2 will decide to go with the Max 8, then obviously in Britain we'll get absolutely loads of them compared to those. I'd imagine it'll only be EasyJet flying it.
Yeah.
What about the likes of people like British Airways and things like that? What do you think they'd sway to? Going off what they're already flying.
Neos all day long, I think.
Do you think they'd just stick with Airbus? Yeah.
They seem pretty much long, don't they?
Yeah, so they'll go for Neos.
Streamliners and whatever. But...
Yeah, they'll go for Neos for their main fleet. And as far as I'm aware, they're going for the Maxes for the South African division. The one with the tail that doesn't look quite right.
Okay.
I think they're called like Comair or something, but that's their secondary division where they wear the livery and things like that. So I think they have actually ordered the Max for that. So it'd be interesting because it gives you an idea for what the Max looks like in the British Airways livery, even if it doesn't look correct. But they will go for Neo all day long for the main the main fleet.
Do you think that's just because
I've flown the British Airways Max on?
Hey,
go on, Ian. Sorry,
go on. No, I was just going to say, do you think it's mainly because British Airways are part of that massive organisation now?
Is that in terms of IAG?
Yeah.
I think no, because I think there is no 737s in their main fleet. So I think you may as well stick with something that served you purpose.
Yeah.
And like it served you well. And for British Airways, like obviously they're retiring their A319s, so and eventually they'll start retiring their older A320 and 21s, which obviously will be replaced by even more Neos, and that I can't see them going down the MAX route.
No. Do you think that there's more airlines now becoming more like, say, Ryanair, who are loyal to Boeing, EasyJet, who are loyal to Airbus and things like that? Do you think a lot more airlines are becoming like that now?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think you think of EasyJet, it's immediately Airbus, and Ryanair is obviously synonymous with Boeing. So I think they almost stick with those, don't they? So they're competitors and are not using the same equipment, so they're offering a slightly different passenger experience. I know it's only marginal, but they are slightly different, aren't they?
Yeah. It's just down to what deal they can get for the aircraft that they bring in. Obviously, the likes of Southwest and that, if you show loyalty to them, obviously you're going to get them on a better discount sort of thing.
Of course, yeah, definitely.
As opposed to the Neo side, had they gone for the 320s, they would not have got anywhere near probably the price that they got for the Maxes. So they may as well just keep loyalty with them and order them. And if they want to,
that's it. Get the best prices possible there.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's literally what it boils down to. Is literally that. So yeah.
I dare say in America it's sacrilege for any to be flying anything other than Boeing, isn't it? You probably find the flag waving Americans won't set foot on an Airbus.
I think Spirit fly Airbus, don't they?
Spirit do, yeah.
But nobody likes Spirit there anyway, do they?
And they also look like bananas, so they don't count.
Yeah, fair enough.
Evil Spirit. But no, I mean, to give you sort of some idea as we sort of begin to not wrap the show up, but we'll wrap this part of the segment up, and then we'll get on to talking about the future of the podcast. To give you some idea as to the success of the 737, I mentioned this to you guys off camera probably, I don't know, maybe a week or two ago, but all sorts of companies that hadn't built airliners before were sort of having a go to kind of try to take a piece of that success and develop it into their own one. And of course, for people that might have never heard of this before, you've got, of course, the Dassault Mercure. Can't get a picture of it, but the Dassault Mercure was one of these aircraft where it was distinguishably like you can tell immediately what it was based off of, and it was not very successful at all, because of obviously how sort of atrocious it was in terms of the range that it had, and just in general the fact that they used it purely for a short haul aircraft, and it did not have the range whatsoever to compete with the 737, because they wanted to create an aircraft that was faster and more efficient than the 737, which they built, didn't have the range in it. And that was kind of, that to me shows you how popular the 737 was, because people were trying to mimic it. So it's
problem is you're always going to fail if you try and copy what is essentially the best at what it's trying to do, aren't you?
I mean, you've had years and years of experience, haven't you, getting to where it is today, and you can't just walk up, can you, and just say, well, this is our attempt at it, and you're not going to get anywhere near it, are you? You're certainly not going to be able to get the loyalty what Boeing have had over the years from airlines just by walking up to some. You can't just walk up to Ryanair with a Dassault, whatever you said it was called, Tom, and say this will compete with your 737 Max 8, and Ryanair is going to turn around and say, could you shut door on your way out, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
You think you think Boeing have nailed down Southwest and Ryanair. They've got two of the biggest players on the planet, haven't they, using their aircraft?
Yeah, and if that's not good, I mean, everyone looks at Ryanair and they criticise the way they slamming down onto runways and, you know, quite rough with them and things like that. But it's testament to a solid aircraft, isn't it? To be fair, that it can withstand the pasting that it actually gets.
So on the screen now, it's a vision of the Mercure for those that don't know what it is. So, like I said, once you see the full kind of picture of it, you'll understand that it is very, very similar looking to a 737. Just did not have the demand and didn't have the sort of the range in order to compete with the 737. So you can see it sort of tried to have like similar engines. Or create its own like similar engines. If we so you can kind of, if you look at that now, you can get an idea for the fact that, if you looked at that for the first time, you'd immediately think, oh, it's probably one of a wacky 737 mock-up or something.
Yeah, no, they've pretty much just used tracing paper, haven't they, on the original designs there?
Yeah. This is a company that was basically known for its like fighter jets and the Falcon 20s and things like that. And they thought, we'll take the risk and build an airliner and hope that it succeeds. And it didn't, and it put them out of business.
Well, yeah, they were never going to break the 737 market, were they? Even kind of rip it off totally. It was never going to happen for them.
No, not at all. Not at all. I will just bring this comment in here. Ryan Beaumont says that he flew on Spirit in what they call the big front seat. It's basically a huge first-class seat without real service. I was shocked, but the flight attendants and passengers were pretty low class.
Damn him.
So I think that says everything that you sort of need to know about the evil spirit.
The evil spirit.
So yeah. So what do we think, just very quickly, about this attempt of trying to copy the 737 from the French?
It would doomed to fail, weren't it? What is it, a 737 100 or 200? And I mean, like you say, they've tried copying the engines, but the engine pylons are a bit further, lower slung, aren't they, if you will? They just don't look right, do they?
No. It did enter service with Air Inter, and I think they ordered had like 12. I think only 12 were built, and now they're sort of stored in Paris, or one or a couple maybe stored in Paris, as well as museum pieces, just to kind of give you an idea for sort of aviation at the time. So
yeah, just to remind you not to mess with Boeing. Yeah,
well, that's it. It's like trying to ride the coattails of success, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
like when you're at school and you have to write your answers out and not copy the textbook. So instead of writing like the Battle of Hastings ended in 1066, you'd write in 1066 the Battle of Hastings ended, and that's exactly what they've done. Just changed the two end numbers round.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah, that has been our dive into the sort of the history and the legacy of the 737. It's been an interesting sort of, I mean, when we were researching it, it was an interesting sort of read in terms of the, I'd say, the history and the design, like blueprints, especially for the original, for wanting to have a T-tail to directly compete with the DC-9. And yeah, I think we've all learned something here, haven't we?
Oh yeah, no, big time.
Absolutely.
Every Sunday debate is like going back to school when you sort of on various websites and using your own sort of knowledge of stuff.
It's nice to refresh the memory.
And
As well.
to say that, I mean, I was going to use Wikipedia, but I stumbled across just a website dedicated to 737s, which was 737.org. And if you want to look at any information about 737s, you'll find absolutely everything on there, right down to technical data and pilots' notes and accidents and God knows what else. It's got everything on it. And to say that one model of one aircraft has got an entire website dedicated to it like that, I think that's testament to the actual aircraft, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Yeah.
well, the 800 certainly will be in our skies for ages to come yet. That's for sure. So
Of course, it will.
the original,
yeah.
the legacy of that will last a lifetime.
Ryan Bomar brings up an interesting comment as well. Since we were talking about rip-offs, have you ever seen the Shanghai Y10, a Chinese attempt of a 707? Any of you guys seen it?
I've just looked at a picture of it now. Yeah.
I can't say I have. No.
So on the screen now, Shanghai Y10 prototype didn't take off or anything like that in terms of sales, but once it comes back onto the screen, you'll see just how much a rip-off it was. And at the time, just obviously very quickly, like China were sort of really out of date with the aircraft because obviously aircraft had moved on in the West, and they were looking back to like 60s technology, and that's why the airliner never came to tuition. So yeah, it's another very, very interesting sort of mock aircraft.
Can I just read this out as well? This was on this 737 site, and it's what's happening after 737, and it says the project name for the 737 MAX replacement is either the NSA, which is the new small aircraft, or the FSA, which is a future single aisle. All we know about it, that CEO Jim McNerney said on the 4th of November 2014, it will be slightly larger than the 737, but its shape won't change dramatically from the current fuselage. By 2030, we will have a new aeroplane. There is a good chance it will be a composite aeroplane. The technology suite that exists today, incorporated in all the new aeroplanes, would not be any better than a MAX today. So the 737 has been optimized very well over the decades, and the MAX continues that with another step in changes. It has become really hard to beat. Rejecting reports elsewhere that the NSA, the FSA could be launched later this decade for possible service entry as early as 2025. Mike Sinnott said, for the middle of the decade, we couldn't do any better than the MAX. This will probably be 5 years beyond that. So it's as though the writing's on the wall for it already, isn't it? Reading that statement there from Boeing.
Definitely,
Yep.
definitely.
Well, by the time we get to like 2030 and all that kind of era, we'll be getting into the hydrogen stuff. So we might have to scrap the conventional 737 to go into the hydrogen sort of aircraft.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well,
it's quite interesting.
That has been our look into the 737 family. Hope everybody's enjoyed that. If you have, please feel free to leave a like on the stream. Let us know if you enjoyed this kind of format. This is what we're going to be kind of moving with going forward. So you get to see our wonderful faces. And everyone wave. So this is the format that we're going to be going with moving forward. So we'd like to know if it's a big thumbs up from you. Like I said, just please feel free to leave a like. And if you're new around here, please feel free to subscribe. Finally, we should have this comment come in because next week we have Plane Spotter 555 come on to the show. And he'll be a guest with us. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Steve, you know Isaac very well.
Oh, yeah, we had a nice afternoon at the airport today. As it happens, he's looking forward to it, so it'll be good next Sunday.
Fantastic. And Ryan Bomar says, is that water or vodka?
That's water. If that were vodka, I'd be on my back now.
I got rum in that one.
He'd be on his back like a turtle.
I would. That's my second pint of water. So yeah, I wouldn't be. Yeah, won't be very coherent.
Wonderful. So thank you as well to everybody that voted in the poll for this evening, which was, would you like to see us stream some Flight Simulator 2020 stuff on the channel? Reason we are asking this question is we are looking to, like I say, do some sort of streaming of games and sort of pre-recorded content as well. So we want to know if you want that, and turns out 83% of you said yes. So keep an eye out on that for the future. What else? Right, let's move into. I'm not going to do shout outs just yet, but we'll do sort of the future of the podcast and what it's going to bring now that we're doing this kind of thing. As you can see, it's really weird doing it on webcam because you've got to try and work it out. It's there. As you can see, tomorrow we launch our merch. Very excited about this. I know why Steve's having a good smile.
I think we all better, to be honest. Yeah.
Yes,
We went on
your landings. We've seen your landings on Flight Sim, Steve, and kind of got to agree with Isaac there.
There's a little flight sim at Bournemouth Airport, and it was lined up nicely. And as I hit the runway, I just ripped the landing gear clean off it. But I did spot it on the black bit, to be fair.
Ryanair are looking for pilots right now.
Yeah.
But no, so down here, there we go. Down here, we are launching merch tomorrow. You can get t-shirts like this. You can get hoodies. Oh, like this. Show it off. There we go. You can get hoodies like that. And Ian's got nothing to show off, so it's fine. Apart from a bottle of vodka and whatever else. But no, so do keep an eye out for that. We will be launching it tomorrow night at 7 p.m. It'll go onto our social medias. We will all be sharing it, so keep an eye out for that if you want to get your own merch. Moving forward, we're going to be doing multi-platform streaming from next week. So we'll not only be live on Facebook, but we'll also be. Well, I've ruined that now. Not only will we be live on YouTube, but we'll be live on Facebook as well. So if you feel like you're watching on YouTube but can't comment because of this, that, and everything else, we'll be over on the YouTube page, Facebook page. I'm tired. It's been a long day, which you can find by searching for the Departure Lounge podcast. Give us a like, and then keep an eye out for, like I say, any news and updates from there. You can, because I've done this throughout the evening, so I may as well just quickly go through it. You can go through and search for our Twitter, which is the Dep Lounge YT. I already mentioned about the Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram at the Departure Lounge YT. You can follow us individually. So you can follow Steve on Instagram at Steve_Planes. You can follow Ian on Instagram at the _plane_place. And follow Steve on Twitter at TDLSteve. So other than that, what do we think? I think I'm liking the new format.
Yeah, no. At the start, I'll admit I was like a swan. I was gracious on the surface and pad underneath the water, but I've settled down as it's gone on.
Yes, I think at the beginning all I kept saying was before doing this was crapping bricks, but it's been a lot of fun, and yeah, still a lot of work to do in terms of getting people to watch. But if you have watched this evening and you've seen us for the first time, big hello to you. And seeing as we're on webcam as a whole, as a three, we would like to thank you for the support that you've shown through many weeks and obviously changes as well. And for anybody that sort of sticks around to, let's say, show the show some support, and has been watching pretty much either from the beginning or from later on. This is a
That'll be
great
a lot.
idea. I like this idea. Ryan Bomar saying, do a drunk episode soon. Do you know what? I think that'd be a lot of fun.
It might have to be after 9 o'clock though, because when we do get together and we've had a drink, it does turn.
And preferably not before
quite as
work.
polite as this.
Either. Yeah, preferably not before a work day either. So maybe on a Saturday or something. But yeah, we'll let you know about that one. But no, literally, from bottom of my heart, Steve's heart, Ian's heart, thank you so much for everybody that's subscribed over the years, and basically listened to the podcast and has interacted as well. I think we all appreciate it, and it drives us on to be able to kind of bring it every week. So yeah, so big thank you to everybody that's been watching. Right. Let us begin to wrap things up. But firstly, there's a comment there from Rob Brown saying, nice one, lads. A bit more personal and interactive. Good effort, troops. So big thank you to
nice one, Rob.
you. So that's going to do it for this week. So we're going to jump into some shout outs. If anybody, because this is a new little thing that I want to try this week, if anybody in the comments has a shout out for anybody, get it into the chat, because now we can show them on screen. So if you want to shout out anybody, do that for the next sort of 5 minutes or so. If you don't want to shout anybody out, that's fine. But we're going to do some shout outs here, and we're going to start out with Steve.
Okie dokie. Well, first of all, I totally echo everything you just said, Tom. To be part of this show is a privilege, and it's really enjoyable, sort of learning everything during the week and having a good laugh with yourself and that. And we appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch us, whether it's live or later on in the week. So just thank you to everyone who sort of supports us. A shout out to Ian as well, and particularly your blue tack company, because that was a good old chuckle earlier on. pretty much, you had one job and you failed, but yeah, not to worry.
Why'd you take the posters away, man? It's got to be done.
And yeah, finally, again, I went to Bournemouth Museum today. It's run by volunteers and that. So anyone who's a volunteer or paid at a museum, thanks for sort of keeping the history of aviation alive for us.
Wonderful.
And, yeah, that's me for this week. Thank you.
Wonderful. Ian, over to you.
Yeah, just thanks to you and Tom, and thanks to Steve as well. Don't set me off already. for letting me be part of it. And like you say, this new format's fantastic. It really, really is. Rob Brown, shout out from don't stop me off on Mango Chutney. No, just thanks to everyone who's just been in chat again tonight, and yeah, just thanks for everyone for joining in and supporting us and enjoying it, I suppose, because it's all about enjoying it, isn't it, and learning something. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I shall give some shout outs as well, and then we'll start to wrap things up here. I'd like to give a shout out to everybody that's been watching, and everybody that's sort of supported this format that we're doing. It is a lot of fun to do. Something that we've been sort of toying with for a long time, actually. But now we've got the access to do it. So, yeah, so big thank you to everybody. Thank you to Steve. For being a wonderful. I keep hitting the microphone there. Yeah, so big thank you to Steve for again doing a stellar job on the podcast. Big thank you to Ian. That way, I've got to get used to this. Ian for again contributing to the podcast, and yeah, just being here with us for I don't know, how long you've been with the podcast now?
Well, I've listened to it since the beginning, but I've only been involved since probably about episode 3 or episode 4 or something like that.
I think it's
I just sat in the background, weren't I? Just reading
it's about
comments.
4, 5, or 6, I think. So you've been here for a long time. So
Yeah.
big shout out to you
I
guys.
think I'm due a free subscription now, aren't I?
So also, no,
I had a mouthful of water then, you idiot.
No, other shout outs include NHS workers, frontline workers across the world. Obviously for the stellar job that you guys are doing, so big thumbs up to you. I can't show that one.
Good shout.
I'd like to give a shout out to a channel that Ian is a big fan of, which of course is the wonderful Chutney channel. Definitely worth looking them up.
That'll be my new background next week.
I want like hashtags and everything, like usernames and the lot.
I'm going to repaint my wall instead of putting posters up.
Just throw chutney at it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, I will show it. Do you know what I will? It's a no holds barred kind of podcast. Ryan Beaumont says, shout out to the women that wear yoga pants. There you go. Got to share the comments. And of course, he also gave a shout out to Joe Dooley as well. So, big shout out to him. Who else I want to shout out? I'm sorry I had people to shout out, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But yes, there you go. That is another show wrapped up for the week. Next week, as we've just mentioned, we are joined by Planespotter 555, also known as Isaac. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll keep you up to date with anything that we're looking to do. We are looking to do many concepts. Won't mention them, but we're looking into doing quite a few concepts. So they are very exciting. So we'll keep you up to date with that. And like I said, merch gets released tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that as well. All that is left to do is for us to actually physically wave you goodbye this time. So, Steve, if you'd like to give that a go.
No.
He's trying.
Did I catch you off guard then?
No, I was just taking the mic because you said give it a go, and I was. But yeah, everyone have a good week.
Whilst I try.
7. Have a good week, and we'll catch you next Sunday.
Dearie me. Ian, you'll go.
Bye.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. We've done all the shout outs and stuff like that. So, thanks for watching, and see you all again next week.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Cheers then.
See you then.
No, and from me, on behalf of everybody, have a fantastic week, and we shall see you next Sunday, 7 p.m, same time, same place, and probably Facebook as well, for another evening of a lot of aviation fun. So take care, everybody, and we will see you next week. Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.